Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering something impossible. You walk into the bathroom, turn on the shower, and hold your breath. Except you don't need to. You take a deep breath underwater, and somehow your lungs are filled with oxygen. You can breathe, you don't cough, you don't panic. You simply inhale, just like you would on land. At first, it would probably feel like a miracle. People would rush to swimming pools, lakes, and beaches just to test it for themselves. Within hours, the entire world would be asking the same question: what just happened to humanity? But the real surprise wouldn't be that humans could breathe underwater. It would be what happens next. Because if humans could breathe underwater, we wouldn't simply become better swimmers. We would gain access to an entire world that has been almost completely inaccessible to us. The ocean covers more than 70% of Earth's surface, and yet humans spend almost all of their lives on the tiny fraction of the planet that sits above the water. Imagine if that suddenly changed. The ocean would no longer be something we visit. It could become somewhere we live, and the consequences could completely reshape civilization. Before we imagine underwater cities and ocean civilizations, there's a huge scientific question. How would humans breathe underwater in the first place? Fish have an advantage that humans don't. They have gills. Gills extract dissolved oxygen from water as it passes over extremely thin surfaces filled with blood vessels. Humans, on the other hand, have lungs. Our lungs are designed to extract oxygen from air. Water contains oxygen too, but much less of it is available compared with the atmosphere. So simply giving humans the ability to breathe underwater wouldn't be enough. Our entire respiratory system would need to change. Perhaps humans would evolve specialized gill-like organs. Maybe our lungs would become dramatically more efficient. Or perhaps a completely new biological system would develop that we don't currently have. And there would be another enormous problem: pressure. The deeper you travel underwater, the greater the pressure becomes. At the surface, you're experiencing the normal pressure of Earth's atmosphere, but descend hundreds of meters, and the pressure becomes enormous. That's one reason humans can't simply swim to the deepest parts of the ocean. Even if you could breathe underwater, your body would still have to survive extreme pressure. So our hypothetical underwater humans wouldn't just need gills. They would need bodies capable of functioning in an environment completely different from the one humans evolved for. And that leads to an even bigger question: what would those humans actually look like? If humans suddenly gained the ability to breathe underwater but remained physically identical in every other way, we'd still have serious limitations. We could explore shallow waters, we could swim for hours without worrying about oxygen, but eventually, pressure, temperature, darkness, and lack of food would become major problems. Over generations, however, humans might adapt. Our bodies could become more streamlined for swimming. We might develop stronger muscles for moving through water. Our eyes could become better adapted to low-light environments. Our ears and other sensory systems might change as well. Even our skin could potentially become better suited for long periods underwater. And if humans began living permanently beneath the surface, culture would start changing too. Think about how much our environment influences the way we live. Humans living in deserts build differently from humans living in Arctic regions. People living near rivers develop different lifestyles from people living in mountains. Now imagine an entire civilization living underwater. There would be no traditional houses, no roads, no streets, no normal cars. Instead, there might be underwater tunnels connecting enormous habitats. Transportation could involve swimming, underwater vehicles, or systems that move people through controlled currents. And instead of looking out a window and seeing a neighborhood, you might look outside and see an endless blue world filled with marine life. But eventually, people would want more than exploration. They would want to build. The first underwater settlements would probably be built relatively close to the surface. These areas would be easier to access, warmer, and receive more sunlight. Imagine enormous structures attached to the seafloor. Some might resemble futuristic glass domes. Others could be built directly into underwater cliffs. Inside, people could live, work, study, and grow food. But here's where things get interesting. If humans can breathe underwater, those structures wouldn't necessarily need to be sealed like submarines. People could potentially move in and out freely. A city could have open swimming routes instead of roads. Public transportation might mean entering a current-powered tunnel and being carried to another district. Instead of elevators, underwater cities could use vertical transport systems that move people between different depths, and architecture would become completely different. Buildings wouldn't need to be designed primarily to resist wind, rain, and gravity in the same way as structures on land. They would need to deal with water pressure, currents, corrosion, and marine life. Entire neighborhoods could be constructed around natural underwater landscapes. Imagine a school built beside a coral reef, a restaurant overlooking a giant underwater canyon, or a home surrounded by thousands of glowing organisms during the night. But living underwater creates one enormous problem: food. Humans can't survive on scenery. We need calories. And that means the ocean itself would become one of humanity's most important resources. Today, agriculture occupies enormous areas of land. We grow crops in fields, use fresh water for irrigation, and rely heavily on a relatively small number of species. An underwater civilization would have completely different possibilities. Seaweed could become one of the most important crops on Earth. It grows rapidly, doesn't require traditional farmland, and can be used for food, fuel, materials, and even industrial products. Humans might develop underwater farms where seaweed and other aquatic organisms are cultivated on enormous structures. Fish farming could become far more advanced too, but humans would have to be careful. If we simply treated the ocean as an unlimited food supply, we could destroy the very ecosystem we depend on. And that's an important theme of this entire scenario. The ocean would give humanity incredible opportunities, but it would also punish us if we abused them. Imagine millions, or eventually billions, of people moving underwater. The demand for food would explode, so humanity would need to develop incredibly efficient underwater agriculture. Perhaps scientists would create artificial ecosystems where different organisms work together. Some organisms produce oxygen, others provide food, others recycle waste. The entire city could function like one giant artificial ecosystem. And if we mastered that system, the ocean could become more than a new place to live. It could become the foundation of a new economy. Think about how much economic activity already happens on the ocean: shipping, fishing, oil and gas, tourism, underwater construction. Now imagine humans actually living beneath the surface. Entire industries would appear. Underwater construction companies could build enormous habitats. Engineers could create underwater farms. Scientists could explore previously inaccessible ecosystems. Tourism could become completely different. Instead of visiting a beach and staying in a hotel beside the ocean, you could actually stay inside the ocean. Imagine booking a vacation in an underwater city. You wake up and watch sharks swim past your bedroom. You walk outside and explore a coral forest. You take an underwater train to another city hundreds of kilometers away, and suddenly the ocean floor becomes valuable real estate. Countries might begin competing over underwater territory. That would create a completely new political problem. Who owns the ocean floor? Could countries claim enormous underwater regions? Would underwater cities become independent nations? Could humans eventually build entire countries beneath the sea? These questions sound ridiculous today, but if humans truly became an aquatic species, they would become unavoidable. And there would be another reason to explore the deep ocean, something we know surprisingly little about. The deep ocean is one of the least explored environments on our planet. We have mapped large areas of the seafloor, but direct exploration remains extremely difficult. If humans could breathe underwater and survive the pressure, that would change everything. Scientists could spend days, weeks, or even months exploring underwater environments. We could discover organisms that have never been seen before. New ecosystems could be studied directly. Deep sea caves could be explored. Underwater volcanoes could be investigated. And perhaps most exciting of all, we could discover evidence of life forms that completely change our understanding of biology. The ocean is filled with strange creatures already. Animals that produce their own light, creatures that survive enormous pressure, organisms that live around hydrothermal vents without sunlight. Now imagine what else could be hiding thousands of meters below the surface. Human underwater exploration could become the equivalent of exploring another planet. Except the planet is right beneath our feet, and the discoveries wouldn't just satisfy our curiosity. They could transform medicine, engineering, chemistry, and biology, but the deeper we went, the more dangerous the ocean would become. Breathing underwater wouldn't make the ocean safe, far from it. The deeper regions would still be extremely cold and dark. Strong currents could move through underwater environments. There would be unstable geological areas. Underwater landslides and volcanic activity could threaten settlements. And then there are the animals. Most marine creatures aren't interested in attacking humans, but an underwater civilization would inevitably have more encounters with large predators and other dangerous species. There could also be a problem that is much harder to see: pollution. Imagine if humanity expanded into the ocean while continuing to produce enormous amounts of waste. Plastic, chemicals, and industrial pollution could spread through underwater ecosystems. And because humans would now depend directly on those ecosystems, the consequences would become much more personal. Polluting the ocean wouldn't just damage wildlife, it could damage our homes, our food supply, our transportation, our entire civilization. So humanity would have to learn an important lesson. The ocean isn't an empty space waiting for us to occupy it. It's already a functioning ecosystem. We would have to become part of it without destroying it. After hundreds of years, something fascinating could happen. Some humans might prefer the ocean. Others would remain on land. Eventually, humanity could split into two major environments: land-based humans and ocean-based humans. Their lifestyles could become completely different. Underwater humans might become better adapted to swimming, pressure, darkness, and aquatic environments. Land humans might remain physically optimized for life on the surface. The two groups could develop different cultures, languages, traditions, and technologies, and perhaps the biggest difference would be psychological. Imagine growing up underwater. The ocean wouldn't feel mysterious to you. It would feel like home. You wouldn't look at the sea and think about danger. You would look at it the way we look at the sky, as a normal part of everyday life. Children could learn to swim before they learn to walk. Schools could teach marine biology as naturally as we teach geography. And instead of dreaming about becoming astronauts, some children might dream about becoming deep ocean explorers. Humanity's idea of what it means to be normal would completely change. Eventually, humans might stop thinking of land and ocean as separate worlds. Instead, we could connect them. Massive underwater transportation networks could connect coastal cities. People could travel from a city on land into an underwater metropolis and continue their journey across the ocean floor. Energy could be generated from waves, tides, currents, and other renewable sources. Ocean farms could provide food. Underwater research stations could monitor Earth's climate. And humans could finally explore huge portions of the planet that are currently extremely difficult to access. But perhaps the greatest change wouldn't be technological, it would be psychological. For thousands of years, humans have looked at the ocean as a boundary, something separating one piece of land from another. If we could breathe underwater, that boundary would disappear. The ocean would no longer divide continents, it could connect them. Humanity would gain an entirely new environment to explore, inhabit, and understand. But there would still be one final question: would we actually be responsible enough to handle it? If humans could breathe underwater, our world would suddenly become much bigger. Not because Earth itself had changed, but because one of its largest environments would finally become accessible to us. We could build cities beneath the waves, grow food underwater, discover unknown species, explore the deepest parts of the ocean, and perhaps eventually create an entire civilization beneath the surface. But the ocean would also teach us something important. Having access to a new world doesn't mean we automatically know how to protect it. Humanity has already transformed much of the land. If we gained the ability to live underwater, we would have another enormous responsibility. We could either build a civilization that lives alongside the ocean, or repeat the mistakes we've made on land. And maybe that's the most interesting part of this entire what if. The question isn't simply, what if humans could breathe underwater? The real question is, what would humans do with an entire new world? Because if we ever gain access to the ocean in a way we can't imagine today, the future of humanity might not just be above us, it might be waiting beneath the waves,